Welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, August 30th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about the state of Utah set to have a new congressional map ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. A decision from a judge in the state of Utah that Donald Trump calls unconstitutional, even though the judge here is ruling on a case in the state where they rule that the state legislature defied the Constitution actually in revoking a proposition that was passed by voters in 2018 establishing an independent redistricting commission. Republicans have gotten away for the past two cycles, having a 4-0 GOP gerrymander with absolutely zero competitive Democratic states. And now we're seats in the state, and now we're starting to see that the Utah judge here has decided that there must be, in many terms, a competitive seat that Democrats can win, and that the gerrymandering must stop in this state, and that the proposition establishing the IRC in Utah was law of the land across this state. But this video isn't as much about the judge ruling as it is about Democrats eyeing up a potential contender in the state of Utah. A big thing here about the state is whether or not there is a revisited competitive district in the state that could usher in an additional Democratic seat with the right candidate for Congress in 2026. And none other than former Democratic Representative Ben McAdams, who actually made history in the state of Utah by winning in this race in 2018, defeating the incumbent Republican Mia Love, who had been elected to this seat years prior. Had been in this seat, held on to it, lost her race in 2018 by a margin of 0.2%. Ben McAdams represented Utah's 4th congressional district for 2 short years before losing his election in the 2020 House races. He lost his race by roughly a point alongside the same national ballot where Donald Trump was dominating in Utah and many other Republican states. But looking at the 2026 year, it seems as if this former Democratic representative, who has not, tried his luck in the state of Utah since then, in the 4th district, as I said, had been overwhelmingly drawn to be a GOP gerrymander in 2022, voted for the Republicans by 29 points. In 2024, voted for the Republicans by a whopping 33 points. And so this district here, or whichever district ends up being the competitive seat, a former Democrat who knows how to win in the state of Utah is set to make a return in the 2026 election, whereas in another set of circumstances would have never even considered the possibility that they would be making a re-entrance into Utah politics. And I think this speaks to a greater reach here for the Democratic Party, that as soon as the opportunity arises, some of their top contenders immediately enter back into the race. With a lot of people looking to speculation around 2026, Ben McAdams never really considered this primary as something that he was going to enter into, and even today, it's yet to be seen which district is drawn to be the most Democratic. And that's because right now, prior to the redrawing of the districts, which already the court order has dictated cannot be the maps implemented in 2026, all of these seats here, solid Republican, solid Republican, solid Republican, and solid Republican. And these districts, again, were drawn in such a way that were so overwhelming and cracked Salt Lake City and diluted Democratic Party vote share across the state, to which the judge has decreed may no longer be the case. And now thinking about the next cycle, thinking about what it would look like if Democrats did end up getting a competitive seat. Like I said, half the battle is having a seat that you can win, and the other half is candidate quality and running a Democrat who is capable of latching onto a swing district and making it their own. Because in 2018, that's exactly what Ben McAdams proved he could do. Looking at the election, that district had swung back and forth, but in 2016 went to the Republicans by 12.5 after in 2012 narrowly voting for a Democrat in this seat by 0.31%, a Democrat who had long time represented different parts of Utah, in some cases by massive amounts. We saw it in 2008 and 2010. It narrowed up quite significantly, but the point was that in 2012, the Democrats held on. In 2014, that incumbent decided to retire. Mia Love entered in, elected then, re-elected in 2016 by double digits, and 2 years later, it's Ben McAdams. And as we've seen across this country, a lot of top Democrats have returned to run for Senate, to run for House, to run for governor. Some top names are being floated. Sherrod Brown is coming back after a 7-point overperformance over Vice President Harris in the state of Ohio. He's coming back to run for Senate yet again in 2026. Governor Roy Cooper, who had served a long time in the state of North Carolina, has never lost a race in the state, is running for Senate on the Democratic side after seemingly, at initial glance, not intending to run for Senate. Democrats are really bringing out some of the top candidates that can run for office across this country and getting them in many states, save maybe Maine, to at least mainstream Democrats to run in many of these states that really matter. And in a state like Utah, I know it feels weird that we're, zoning in and honing in on an individual congressional district where, one Democratic representative seems like he's going to make or break the deal here in Utah, but very much so that could be the case. And because Donald Trump is trying to, call this an unconstitutional court order, the Republicans in Utah are trying to do what they can to maintain the map as is and just make it a little bit more competitive, which means that they've seen, hypothetical maps exploring the possibility of Trump plus 7, Trump plus 10, Trump plus 15 districts that would take, again, a very strong Democrat in order to win those races. And that, to Democrats, is what Ben McAdams represents. There's not many Democrats in Utah that they can look to as, major contenders. The bench is not big. They have to go back to 2018 to find that the last time there was a U.S. representative from this state, and he might be making a return. And I do think it's arguably the best move for Democrats to rerun a candidate who already won in a swing district, especially if the judge ends up saying that the Republicans are non-compliant and takes a map from the plaintiffs, who are the Democrats suing to make this map illegal, to which the judge made that decision that the map in Utah, in fact, was illegal. And now we're seeing that the Utah Republicans have until the end of next month to propose a new map that would be implemented in the 2026 midterms, and chances are, even if they are trying to hedge their bets, the judge has already made it clear. If you F around, you're going to find out. Meaning that if they do not propose a map that fits within the boundaries of the 2018 Proposition 4 in the state dictated, which would inevitably be a competitive seat, if not a slightly Democratic-leaning seat, or 2 competitive seats, Democrats have a candidate to run in a district and have a high likelihood of flipping said district, even if the odds were stacked against them. Because the Republicans in safe districts don't exactly have the best, because they don't need to send their best. This map was meant to withstand the test of time in the 2022, 2024, 2026, and so on and so forth cycles. The Democrats would never even come close in any of these districts. The narrowest race in the last cycle was in Utah's 2nd district, where the Republicans won by just 24%. But that's actually so massive that saying just 24% feels so unreal and incomprehensible, because it's such a massive margin. Even that 4th district that used to be more competitive was won by 33.2%. Now, in terms of who the Republicans will actually draw out of the state, there's no, guarantee as to who that might be. Taking a look at the Utah, I believe this is the 2nd district here, the Republican primary was a nail-biter. Colby Jenkins ran against Celeste Malloy, who won her race by 0.2% in the Republican primary and lost the state convention in this state. It was clear. Colby Jenkins was endorsed by Mike Lee, the Utah Republican Party, the House Freedom Fund. Celeste Malloy, on the other hand, had the endorsement of Donald Trump going into this Republican primary. And so thinking about, what this was, it was very much a back and forth between more, non-traditional Republicans in the state who were more extreme, not as much as the, Mitt Romney day and age of Utah-style Republican, but nonetheless, still a Republican voter who is making a difference to some degree in this race. And the 2nd district ended up being one that had a very, very competitive race on the GOP side. And so there is some speculation that if the Republicans are forced to draw out anyone, it actually would not be, Burgess Owens, who represents the former competitive district, but potentially Celeste Malloy in Utah's 2nd district, which already stands to be, as of right now, the 2nd, the most competitive district in Utah's 2nd. Now, we will see. Will Democrats eventually get this district? That's something that is up in the air. My bet right now is that Democrats probably come closer to a more competitive map than they do to a Democratic vote sink. But we will see exactly what this judge decrees as following the guidelines as outlined by the 2018 proposition. Because it was pretty clear in the court ruling that this judge had felt that the Democrats had the Republicans rather have overextended their authority in the legislature by drawing out and revoking Proposition 4, a citizens passed referendum, to which the state legislature said, we don't agree with that, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of it. That's not the way that, citizen passed referendums are supposed to go. That just simply doesn't make sense, right? The voters don't pass something for the legislature to say, we ultimately disagree with the will of the voters, and therefore we're going to revoke it. And so that's why you see Democrats making that argument for the case of California, where voters will get a direct say as to what their congressional map will look like. And in the state of Utah, because Republicans overextended and drew a map that was so unfavorable to the Democratic Party, this judge is directly intervening because it is clear as day that they are violating some of the provisions that were put into Proposition 4, where it was meant to have, representation that made sense for the state of Utah and, didn't make sense to have 4 Republicans and 0 Democrats in the state. And obviously, too, if they had not drawn this map as extreme and just relied on a 2020 style map, there's no doubt in my mind that this map would have likely been upheld. And the outcome would have been the exact same. Democrats would have gotten 0 seats in 2022 and 2024, and Republicans would have held 100% of the congressional delegation. You just avoid the judge intervening and saying, this is not a fair map. Because this map and 2024's have the exact same congressional representation, only one race is competitive. But Republicans obviously are scared. And that's why Donald Trump is looking to this and saying he knows that someone like Ben McAdams wants to enter into one of these races. That this Democrat wants to be involved in a congressional seat to any capacity, regardless of where it is drawn in the state, because Democrats, in their eyes, deserve representation out of the state of Utah. And Ben McAdams might be able to deliver on that. And so we'll see. Should this map take into effect, which I do believe, we're getting closer to that being a reality than Republicans actually postponing it as much as they would hope, Democrats having an already strong candidate to pull off the bench and enter right full steam ahead into a congressional election that is likely going to be one of the most competitive Utah has seen since the 2018 midterm elections. The 2026 race in Utah will be largely defined by the map that comes about us, but with Ben McAdams in the race, Democratic odds of victory already go up. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.